So about a year ago, I decided I finally wanted to switch over to a non-toxic oil painting practice. You know, we were in quarantine, I had a little health scare, and I just said, you know what, it's time to look into this and to switch out my solvents. So if you don't know, oil paint itself isn't toxic unless it's ingested, but the main toxic ingredient in oil painting practice is solvents. So Gamsol or turpentine or whatever you use to clean your brush and to thin the paint while you're painting. So when people talk about non-toxic oil painting, they're usually referring to the solvents, but there's also other things you can do along the way with the paints, with gloves, with all kinds of things. So I'll talk about switching out the solvents as well as my other tips. And the main issue with solvents, like you'll hear that Gamsol is odorless, but for me, it still gives me a lot of headaches and I feel really sick if I'm around it, and it's still releasing VOCs into the air. So I don't personally consider it that safe. It's better than turpentine, but I just decided to, err on the safe side and look into other more natural ways. And, I just hated the smell too. So this way has been a lot better for me. And especially if you have like pets or kids around, it can be really helpful to, reduce the risk of them getting into something. So, do what you will, but I'll just talk about my practice and what has worked for me. Okay, so the first thing, switching out your solvents. The purpose of solvents is when you're painting, it's to thin the paint if you want to get like a watery effect, or to clean your brush during the painting process, and if you want to like switch to a new color, and then at the end of painting, cleaning your brush for the end of the day. And I want to make a quick note about lavender spike oil. This is something that when you look into non-toxic painting, a lot of people talk about lavender spike oil. I did my research and there's a bunch of blogs you can find, but basically they add a lot of other chemicals to lavender spike oil, particularly the Chelsea brand, which is like the most popular brand. So it's not actually pure, and you can find the full ingredients on like the art store websites. So I don't recommend using lavender spike oil, and it has a very, very strong odor. So I just want to make a note because a lot of people, see that as like the first alternative, but I do not recommend that personally. But obviously research on your own and see what works for you. Okay, so what I do is you want to have a drying oil. There's drying oils and non-drying oils. Drying oil is what you want to use during painting, like while you're painting. So safflower oil, linseed oil, walnut oil, stand oil, these type of things, those are all great. You can use them during painting to sort of thin the paint. It doesn't actually thin it, but it makes it more spreadable, or like the viscosity is increased maybe. So during painting, and also you can clean your brush during painting if you want to switch to a new color on that brush. That's about it. I don't use it for cleaning at the end. For cleaning at the end of painting, I use a non-drying oil instead. So you never want to use a non-drying oil during painting. So a non-drying oil is like mineral oil or baby oil, that kind of thing. These are amazing for cleaning your brush at the end of painting, but you don't want it to mix with your drying oils or your oil paints. It's just not a good thing. So after I'm done painting for the day, I will clean my brushes in the non-drying oil. Like I use mineral oil mostly, it's amazing. And then I will dry my brush on a towel as much as I can after the oil. And then I will go in with like a Dawn soap, or, some people use pink soap, or the Master brush cleaner soap that's in like a jar. That stuff is great. Any kind of soap, and you just want to clean with soap and water at the end after that non-drying oil. Another tip, because you're not using Gamsol in this process, you want to have multiple brushes for like each color that you're using during the painting process. Like normally with Gamsol you could get away with like 1 or 2 brushes because you could clean it really quickly, but because like linseed oil and things don't clean your brush that well while you're painting, you still want to have like, a red brush and a blue brush. You don't want to like only have one brush the whole time. So just have multiple brushes laying around ready during the process. And instead of using paper towels, I usually use rags. So I will cut up old t-shirts and create rags out of those. Or you can buy like cheap rags at, Target or something. But yeah, I do that because it's a little bit more sustainable. And then you always want to let those rags dry outside, like not on top of each other, because that can start a fire. Like oil paint is like flammable. So, wipe your brush on a rag while you're painting and then let it dry outside, and then keep using that rag until it's full of paint. Let it dry again, and then you can throw it away. Okay, let's talk about water mixable oil paint. I think this is such a good option for beginners or people who maybe like watercolors. They're basically oil paint that is changed molecularly to mix with water. So I actually love this for using for an underpainting. So if you typically like to do washes or like a really thin underpainting with Gamsol, normally you can switch that out with a water mixable oil paint and just do like a thin wash or an underpainting and then let it fully dry. And then you can go back with layers of regular oil paint and like linseed oil and things like that. So highly recommend water mixable oil paint for under layers, or you can use only water mixable oil paint if you're a beginner or you just want to like try out oil painting. I think it's a great option. So okay, another big tip I have is to always wear gloves when you're painting. Some people laugh at this, or I get a lot of questions like, why are you wearing gloves? But I've done this for years, and not only does it protect your skin from the paint getting on there if there's like metals in the paint, it's also just much easier when you're cleaning up because oil paint's hard to get off your hands. Like if you do get it on your hands, I recommend like rubbing alcohol, but it's not easy to get off like with soap or anything. So it's much easier cleaning up if you have gloves on and your hands don't get dirty. I'm obsessed with these gardening gloves that I get on Amazon. I think they're made out of nitrile, or yeah, I don't know if that's how you say it, nitrile. There's different types, I had some cotton gloves for a while, but they weren't that good. So yeah, any kind of gloves works, latex, whatever you want. Just I recommend it to protect your skin from any, chemicals in the paint. Okay, next is ventilation and letting your paintings dry in a safe place. So if you're not using Gamsol, you don't necessarily need to let your paintings dry like outside or something. Like you can let them dry inside, but for me personally, like the smell of oil paint drying is still pretty strong even without solvents, and I don't really like the smell. So I try to let my paintings dry outside with boxes over them. Like I'll keep a shipping box and put it over my painting so like dust doesn't settle on the painting. You could let it dry, your paintings dry by a window with like a fan, whatever works for you. But I do recommend always having ventilation even if you're not using solvents, just because oil paint smells really strong, especially when it cures. It doesn't actually dry, it cures, I should say. But yeah, it just helps with any like paint smells and that kind of thing. And of course it's safer if you have ventilation for kids and pets and that kind of thing, just to be safe. Again, like I've not heard of oil paint giving off fumes itself because it's just like paint. It's not water soluble, but I don't know, for me, if something smells strong, I just get like, I'm kind of skeptical of like, is this really safe to breathe in like constantly? So it's just good to have ventilation to be safe, Okay, and then as far as safer brands and safer colors goes, I'm not going to talk too much about this because I honestly haven't done enough research and it's something I want to learn more about. But I will say that there are safer brands. For example, Natural Earth Paints is a brand I really want to try, and they don't use like cadmium red, for example. They have Venetian red. So they use a lot better ingredients in their oil paint. I have just been using, Winsor Newton, Gamblin, like the typical brands. And even those brands, like I think they have some safer colors and things. But because I use gloves and I don't use Gamsol, like I'm not ingesting the paint, I haven't really cared too much about like the brands or the colors as much, but this is something I do want to learn more about. But I will say that like the cadmiums are more toxic, and a lot of them have heavy metals and stuff. So if you are interested in, you know, going like super down the rabbit hole, look into like Natural Earth Paints or another brand like that. Okay, and lastly, after all of those non-toxic painting tips, I do want to just mention that there is one solvent that I do still use. It is called Winsor & Newton Brush Cleaner and Restorer, and it is a low odor solvent. And I only use it like once a month or once every 2 months. I keep a little jar of it outside on my porch, so it's like totally away from me. And about once a month or once every 2 months, I'll soak my brushes in there. The ones that are like kind of, dirty, like oil paint's not coming off. I'll soak them in there for like 20 minutes, and then I'll rinse the brushes with soap and water. And this is kind of just like a maintenance thing. It kind of keeps my brushes lasting longer and looking good. I would rather not use it, but for now, I think it's a good like once in a while cleaning option, and I keep it away from me outside. So I just want to say, like, this process isn't perfect, and oil paint is it's a very like thick substance, so it's hard to get off, brushes and things. So sometimes you have to use, you know, a toxic thing once in a while, but just be careful and use it very sparingly. It's always about improving, not necessarily like being perfect. So yeah, that's about it. Play around, experiment, let me know your personal tips. And this is all just, my experience. There's so many other materials out there. Like there's all kinds of soaps and cleaners that I know other people use that are like non-toxic. So, let me know in the comments like what you use and what you love. And yeah, I hope this was somewhat helpful. I'm personally not an expert, but I'm looking forward to learning more all the time and always improving and just having a safe painting practice. So thanks so much for watching, and yeah, I'll see you soon. Bye.